Thank you to all the medical professionals and first responders who are working so hard, so bravely to keep us safe and keep us healthy. And this program is for you. And if it helps you get 10, 15 minutes of relaxation and things off your mind, then it was well worth the effort. And we begin with Get Up and Go because it was a busy sports weekend. Here's where it starts. Sources tell our Adam Schefter over the weekend that high-level officials from multiple NFL teams are now preparing to conduct the NFL draft from home and not at their team facilities. The draft is scheduled to begin April 23rd. That's 2 weeks from Thursday. How about this night last night for Gronk? Rob Gronkowski picked up his first wrestling title at WrestleMania 36 last night. He is the WWE 24/7 champion. We'll explain and have moments from this a little later in the show. Elsewhere, UFC 249 still scheduled for April 18th. It appears the UFC is very close to securing a new venue for the event. Most likely that will be on the West Coast. We'll keep you posted. Over the weekend, the 2020 Basketball Hall of Fame class was announced. All 8 finalists were selected, headlined, of course, by the great Kobe Bryant, who was joined in this class by, among others, Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett. You would be hard-pressed to find a more decorated trio of players to be enshrined in any single year, and you see on your screen here what an extraordinary group this is. And we will have Charles Barkley later this morning talking about it here on Get Up. Back to the NFL. Speaking on a conference call with Major League Sports commissioners on Saturday, President Trump said he believes the NFL season should start on time. He said he hopes to have fans back by August and September. California Governor Gavin Newsom later said, quote, "I'm not anticipating that happening in this state." Now, Adam Schefter tweeted this morning, just in the last hour or so, the following. Today would have been the start of off-season workouts for teams with new head coaches. So Mike McCarthy in Dallas, Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, Joe Judge in New York, Matt Rule in Carolina, Ron Rivera in Washington. Only virtual off-season work now. So essentially, today is the first day that there's actual on-field action that is being missed. And so for more, let's bring in Dan Graziano, our NFL insider extraordinaire. Dan, what are you hearing after this call with the president this weekend and everything else about the NFL's plans going forward?
Well, let's focus on the offseason. First of all, you mentioned that it would have been the start of offseason programs for teams with new head coaches as early as today. Those plans are on hold. Obviously, the league and the Players Association are discussing what the offseason work rules will be in a situation where players can't go to team facilities. At this point, they would have been able to work out with strength and conditioning coaches, would have been able to sit in meetings, etc. Can't do any of that. I heard from a league spokesman last night who told me, quote, "We anticipate having a decision about the timing and content of the offseason program early this week." So sometime early this week, teams will have the rules for what they can do in terms of communicating with their players, getting them playbooks, having virtual meetings, etc. So that's all being worked out now in terms of the off-season. So far, this isn't a week where people would miss any significant work, so there's no rush to get that decision made, but they should have it in the next couple of days. And in terms of projecting out to the regular season, look, not much has changed since last week. The NFL is of the hope and the optimistic belief that it can have its season as scheduled, but really nobody knows at this point because so much depends on what happens in the coming weeks and months in terms of the situation in the world at large.
All right, Graziano, we'll check back with you. Thank you. Meanwhile, here's who else I have for you today talking football. Dan Orlovsky and the big swagoo, Marcus Spears. It is great to see you guys. Hope you had a good weekend. Danny, I'll start with you. As you hear this conversation, football, the idea that perhaps football will be back in September, and we know that as of now, the teams with new coaches are missing work. What are your overriding thoughts?
Greeny, I'm a lot like you. I choose to be optimistic about this, even though it's April 6th. And I think the reality is this. Great leaders always have plans. And the NFL is full of great leaders. So, listen, if the NFL starts on time, that's great. We know how to do that. But the leadership of the NFL needs to have multiple plans that are ready to enact. Maybe a variables change. Maybe there are no fans. Or maybe it's a shortened time frame. Or maybe it starts later. They need to have all those plans in place and be ready to react accordingly. And Greeny, I'll be honest with you, man. If we get football in any capacity in September, I'll be thankful for that, because the reality would be this. That means that we're in a better place then than we are now, and I'll be thankful for that.
Yeah, for sure. Swagoo, put yourself in the position of being an active player right now. What do you imagine the players are thinking now and going through and dealing with as they try to figure out exactly what their future looks like?
Well, the word obviously is optimistic, G, but I believe this is a moving date. But I think, like Dan said, in leadership, you want to give a good headspace. You want to give hope that the football season is here, because not only does it represent football, it represents normalcy. That's what people are trying to get back to. So football has always presented us with an opportunity to break away from the realistic things that happen in life. But when we look at this situation that could obviously affect there being football and get rid of those things that we've been able to get away from for so many years because football is being played, is in jeopardy per se. But I'm with you guys. I choose to be optimistic, but I know that this is a moving date, and I know no one truly knows if the football season will start on time. But in some capacity, if we can get it, it will represent what normalcy is in this country at that time of the year. And I think everybody is looking forward to that with hope and needs that.
Absolutely. I want to make clear what I mean by optimism. Listen, I'm not unrealistic and I'm not Pollyannish, but it doesn't cost anything to root for the best. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to root for the best. I don't have access to any information everyone else doesn't have. I'm going to root for the best. I'm going to hope that it works out well. But if you're the NFL or us or anybody else, you plan for all possible eventualities. We'll wait and see. Meanwhile, let's do some of the real football news here around the football. Let me get Graziano back in to run the hurry up a little bit. There was some late news from Kansas City. Dan, what's going on?
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs restructured the contract of wide receiver Sammy Watkins. He'll earn about $9 million this year as opposed to $14, though he can make another $7 in incentives. He gets a no-trade clause, which is big. He doesn't want them to move him. And the Chiefs save $5 million in cap space, which is also big because prior to this move, the Chiefs had $177 in cap space. Not $177,000, $177. They absolutely needed to do something like this to clear cap room.
Well, that's remarkable. How about a guy who's going to cost more than that? Jadeveon Clowney, what's the latest with him?
I would be surprised if there wasn't a Clowney deal done with some team this week. I know they want to get it done before the draft. He has multiple teams interested. We know that his price going into free agency was too high. It scared some teams off. So presuming that he's now at the point where he's closer to what teams want to offer, I still see Seattle as a possibility, Tennessee, maybe Cleveland. A lot of teams interested. I think there's a resolution on this coming soon.
Yeah, he's one of 3 #1 overall picks who are free agents. Here's another, Cam Newton, who was officially released by the Panthers almost 2 weeks ago. There are not a lot of quarterback openings left where the former MVP could walk into a starting role, we would assume, next season. So, Dan, what are we hearing about the level of interest in Cam right now?
Frankly, Greeny, not very much. And I think at this point, Cam Newton is willing to wait until after the draft and see how the draft affects teams' quarterback situations. And maybe there's a situation where a team goes into the draft with a certain plan at quarterback and it doesn't fall the way they expect it to, and then they turn their attention to other options. And one of those options, obviously one of the better-looking options at that point, would be Cam Newton. So I think his camp and he are patient right now. They want to wait out the market and see if it comes to them a little bit, because right now, as we've discussed, he has that foot injury. No one can bring him in for a physical. A lot of questions about the health of Cam Newton, and I think this could take a while before he finds a new team.
Yeah, there's probably no active player in the NFL being more impacted by the circumstances under which we are living right now than Cam is relative to that opportunity to find a new team. So meanwhile, we had Warren Moon on, or I should say First Take had Warren Moon on last week, and he explained why he thinks Cam will have and is having a hard time catching on to a backup role. This was interesting. Here's what Warren Moon said.
He's not a guy I don't see going somewhere where he can be a backup. He still brings a lot to the table if he's healthy. The thing that concerns me is his personality. He's a big-time personality. He brings a lot to the table when he comes to a team. And there's some teams that probably could deal with that, and there are other teams that don't want their leader to be that type of personality. So that's where he's going to find the problem in trying to find another home.
That was interesting. Marcus Spears, what do you think?
Warren is right. Cam is a different beast, man, and he brings a lot with him, like Warren Moon said. Teams may not want a polarizing quarterback. Cam is polarizing. Cam dresses different. His attitude and approach to the game is brash and outlandish, which I think makes Cam Newton great, which I think is one of his best qualities, is his attitude when he plays the game. I've had a chance to play across the line of scrimmage from Cam Newton, and I know that the team that Cam Newton has played for, the Carolina Panthers, for so many years, fed off of what Cam brings to the game. So Warren Moon is not wrong. Some teams may not want that. Some teams' direction as far as having Cam Newton in the building and everything that comes with him, as far as his polarizing personality, the things that he does and says, they may not want that. But I know they want the football player that Cam is, and if they want the football player that Cam is, they're going to have to let Cam be Cam, because that's what makes him great.
Danny?
Yeah, but let's not pretend that that's, Cam Newton's biggest issue right now. I mean, Cam Newton's biggest issue is 18 months ago, he suffered a shoulder injury, and we haven't seen Cam, nor has any team seen Cam be healthy since that. And because of the climate that we're in, no team can prove otherwise. But let's not, can we not do the whole quarterback personality thing tied to Cam Newton again? I mean, did not Ron Rivera prove that you can allow a guy to be himself and he can be an MVP player in this league and he can lead you to a Super Bowl? I mean, that's exactly what Cam did. So I don't believe that there's teams sitting there going, man, we actually believe that Cam Newton's healthy, but I don't really like his personality. He can help our football team, but I don't think his personality meshes with our football team. Here's the reality: expectations. Expectations are predetermined resentments. And what are Cam Newton's expectations, both financially and role-wise? Because he's got three options. His expectations could be multiple-year contract and a starting job. His expectations could be a single-year contract that's fair value and the opportunity to compete for a job. And if he loses that competition, then he is the backup, or no expectations at all. But as long as